Good morning again, everyone. Guys, we're going to be talking about the BRICS summit today that Vladimir Putin's holding. We're going to be talking about what this actually means. I mean, in the West here, we kind of see ourselves as the global leader and the leaders of the world in the most developed countries. Now, if you're in one of these, what they call undeveloped countries or developing countries, these people are looking, and these people are trying to find their feet in the global sphere. When you look back through history, when a rising power threatens the existing power, a violent clash is the normal, not the exception. So when we're looking at the rise of the BRICS nations, or the rise of BRICS, or the rise of another superpower, doesn't really matter who or what that power is labeled, but you can see the rise of this, let's just call it East versus West. You can see the rise of this power in the East. Now, Thucydides' trap is something that clearly states that violence is the normal. Now, a war in these circumstances is more than likely. So, as we're heading towards these things, we've got to look at what's happening on a global stage. Now, we're going to talk about the BRICS nations and their summit, and how that fits into the global spectrum. I did a video earlier on today, and I'll link it at the end. And I talked about how the United Kingdom are taking money from Russian oligarchs and giving that to the Ukrainians, not just to pay for military assets, but basically to prop up their economy. Now, I said, this is a war of currencies, because if NATO fail, then that means it's the end to the US dollar, it's the end to the euro, it's the end to the Western way, because these emerging nations, and we'll come on to why they're so important, but these emerging nations will lose faith in the dollar, they'll lose faith in the euro, so they'll stop putting their money in the euro, stop putting their money in the dollar, and those currencies will collapse. Once those currencies collapse, the people controlling those currencies, whether that's a bank or a political class or a people, I'm not going to get into that speculation or that argument, but once that collapses, it's not going to be good for those people. So that's why right now, I don't think there's any tangible route to, I don't feel there's any tangible route to a peace deal or peace talks, although people, often like to float the idea. So let's just get straight into it then, guys. I've not read this article myself. I've looked at the heading, I looked at the first few sentences, and I have to admit it was a lot better written than a few of the other ones I read. When you're reading these articles, some of them are just so ridiculous in their wording and their terminology. It's kind of like written hypnosis. If you read this garbage, you kind of think, oh, right, okay, yeah, desperate Putin holds last-ditch meeting. That's not what's happening at all. That is literally not what's happening at all. And we all, remember when Vladimir Putin went over to North Korea and people were saying, desperate Putin seeks help from crazy Kim Jong. Oh, well, look what's happened now. That could actually be the tide turner in Ukraine. So all those people that were laughing and joking about desperate Putin going over to North Korea, well, guess what? Kind of not that desperate and not that needy now, is he? Now he's got 12,000 troops potentially ready to deploy into the Ukrainian front, deploying on their own access with their own logistics, their own supplies, So the media, their terminology and their wording, it's ridiculous. And people who read this and don't look at things objectively and think, right, that's Cobble's water, that needs to be said, and look through these articles objectively and understand the meaning of them without just looking at the keywords and the buzzwords. But anyway, so we'll get onto this article here. Putin hosts BRICS summit in Russia under shadow of Ukraine war. So summary: Russia to showcase growing BRICS clout. BRICS partners pressing Putin for peace in Ukraine. I genuinely don't think they really are. I think that's just like one of those things that they have to do. Putin lays down conditions for any ceasefire, and those the conditions he's laid down for a ceasefire kind of sound like a surrender treaty. So that's not gonna, that's not gonna fly with the Ukrainians, because it's not gonna fly with the Ukrainians, it's not gonna fly with the West, and it's pointless. It's pointless people putting down these right. I've got these conditions for a ceasefire. Right, what are they? Total surrender of your troops, total control of your military, and total annexation of the land we've already got. Yeah, hang on a minute, Vladimir. I respect you, bro, but that's kind of, you have to give something with when you go into these peace talks. So, it's absurd. BRICS members account for 35% of the global economy. So that's what we're talking about now, guys. And when we're looking, and when people laugh at the BRICS nations and say, oh, it's an emerging power. Yes, that's the threat. Because when you're an emerging nation, everybody's working together, you're all pushing, you're all driving, you're all wanting to succeed. It's kind of like when you've got a mixed martial arts fighter and he's been the champion for so long. The people coming up to try and dethrone him, they're the ones who are training with that intensity and with that with that strength and with that vigor. And the champions just sat on top thinking, yeah, I'm the champion, no one can beat me. And pride comes before the fall. And somebody did a meme the other day about pride comes before the fall. And they've done it. And they talked about the pride marches in the United Kingdom, which are obviously, well, you guys know what the pride marches are. And I just thought, is that a thing that they're actually doing? So Kazan, Russia, 20 August. Russia wants the BRICS summit to showcase the rising clout of the non-Western world. But Moscow partners from China, India, Brazil, and the Arab world are urging Vladimir Putin to find a way to end the war in Ukraine. The BRICS group now, let's just talk about that. So if you've got this, if we right, so let's just take what I've just said as a given. Let's just accept that. Let's just accept this is a war between the East and the West. It's a war between BRICS and NATO, for want of a better word. If you're in the BRICS nations, do you want to be playing second fiddle? Do you want to be the second, the junior partner in that relationship, or do you want to be the senior partner? Of course you want to be the senior partner. Of course you want to be the leader. Of course you want to be the ones in charge. So if we say that this conflict in Ukraine is the linchpin that's going to dictate whether the West is leading the world for the next, 50 years or whatever, till the aliens come, I don't know, or whether the East is leading the world to the next 50 years or till the aliens come, then we understand now that this war is going to dictate it. So when people are calling for peace and people calling for a ceasefire, I think they only mean a ceasefire. I think the BRICS nations only want a ceasefire if it's on Russian terms. So I don't really see, I just think it's one of those flags that they're waving, that they pretend to wave. Like like the analogy I gave you guys when I said, you're going camping, your kids are being a nightmare. So you say to them, right, we're not going camping, but your bill's still buying stuff. It's kind of like one of those things. It doesn't matter what people are saying. Look where they're putting their money. The BRICS group now accounts for 45% of the world's population. Guys, that is absolutely huge. If we in the West are not afraid of that, then we are stupid. We are sleepwalking into oblivion, and we deserve whatever is coming at us. And 35% of its economy based on purchasing power, partially though through China, though China accounts for over half of its economic might. Doesn't matter who accounts for most of it. The fact is that they account for it. So this is a huge trading bloc. This is a huge financial bloc. This is a huge population. Now, a currency is only worth the human equity that it's backed up by. So when you're looking at, we're now, BRICS now accounts for 45% of the world's population. That is a lot more than, I didn't realize that. And it's a lot more than I actually thought. So when we're talking about moving forwards in these global conflicts and looking at why things are happening, You've got to think about Thucydides' trap, and when a rising nation meets, you know, the up and coming, the leading nation, you almost, well, a violent conflict is almost the normal. Looking back through history, this has happened time and time again. I don't know if our politicians think they're smarter than history, but you know the old saying: if you don't understand history, you're doomed to repeat it. Putin, who is cast by the West as a war criminal, told reporters from BRICS nations that BRICS does not put itself in opposition to anyone, that the shift drives the global growth. That the shift in the drives of global growth was simply a fact. This is an association of states that work together based on common values, a common vision of development, and most importantly, the principle of taking into account other people's interests, he said. So the BRICS nations, I will leave it there with that article share. So the BRICS nations, one of the main things that they go with, if you think about NATO, the world, you know, everything in NATO is traded in US dollars. Everything in the EU is traded in the euro. The BRICS nations, what they're saying is everything will be traded at your own local currency. So if you're one of these emerging markets and you're one of these emerging countries, a developing country, and you're just moving through, you're finding resources in your country, you're building your economy, you're building growth and stability in your country, where are you going to put your money? Are you going to put your money in the West, in NATO, in the euro? We've already seen what happens when a country you've already seen that EU countries will take people's money and give it to whoever they want. We've already seen sanctions that of countries that use the US dollar, which has obviously drove Putin into his black fleet, his black oil market. That's a separate video. So we've already seen the volatility in the dollar. We've already seen the volatility and the instability in the euro. And by volatility and instability, I mean, if you put billions of euros into Europe, they may take it off you as and when they please and give it to someone else. We've seen that. There's a precedence of that being done. If you're trading in your own currency, that can't happen. So, I genuinely right now don't see a road. I don't see a tangible road for peace. I don't see a way that anyone can back down. Vladimir Putin's, map for ceasefire, it kind of looks like a surrender treaty, and that's what, the BRICS nations will be getting behind. They'll be saying, yeah, look, we want this ceasefire. We want this ceasefire. Why do they want a ceasefire? They only want a ceasefire if the Russians have come out on top. Why? Because that will give more stability to the BRICS nations. It will give more clout to the BRICS nations, and it will push the BRICS nations higher up on a global stage. Guys, there really isn't any way out. Most of these videos, guys, they're my own analysis, my own speculation, and my own opinion. Let me know what you guys think. I will respond actually to every comment that I get. Guys, we are heading into wild times. I'm going to Mac to Grid. I'll get you guys another video later.